Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Barbershop Conversations. As always, we're going to dive into deep dialogue, deep conversation, deep moments that I hope helps some of us heal, be delivered, and set free from some of the things that hold us bound. If you were fortunate enough to join us 2 weeks ago, we started this conversation about fatherhood. That conversation or that type topic of that show was really uh, Father's Day, the Forgotten Holiday was the title of that show, and we kind of touched the base about what is fatherhood, what does that mean, what does that look like, um, what are the responsibilities attached to the word fatherhood. And so we touched on that a little bit. It was my brother Chris on with me, and I had another brother, Brian Caver, was on, and we really just kind of dug deep into some of what society sees us as, how they see us, how we perceive that thing called fatherhood, and how we portray fatherhood. And so today, I wanted us to take it to another level, a deeper conversation, and really talk about not just what fatherhood is, but how fatherhood impacts not only us as individuals, as men of color, but how do we change the narrative to get rid of some of the hurt, the pain that sometimes is brought to our families through that medium of fatherhood. Um, if you had an opportunity to listen to our sisters, Monica and Sister Deborah and First Lady Ford, who spoke on the beauty shop last week, they talked a little bit about their own journeys and their own stories when it comes to fatherhood, how they portray, how it was portrayed for them, how it was even received. Um, and it brought to my attention that there's a lot of pain, hurt, and confusion sometimes even on how our women see us or receive us or don't receive us. And so I want to talk about that tonight as well. How do we deal with, you know, our connections, our relationships with our significant others as a man, as a father? How do we connect and deal with our relationships with our children when it comes to fatherhood? And if there are those gaps or those spaces, how do we start creating places of healing, and what that looks like, and how we help other folks understand how to move forward in that? So we're going to dive into that a little bit. If you brothers are with me, we're going to break this
Absolutely.
thing down a little bit tonight.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
gonna open the floor real quick with allowing both of my brothers. I know you guys, but give everybody just a quick little snapshot of who you are, your name, and a little bit about you.
Okay. I'm Chris Johnson, known as Elder Chris. Uh, have two kids, married, been married for 20,
Yeah, get it
25
right.
years.
There you go. Get it right.
been with my wife for 29 years.
Mm,
Um, and just love the Lord, love my family. And I don't know what else you want to know. I mean,
there it
professionally,
is.
I'm a financial advisor. Uh,
Okay.
That's about it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Right.
There he is.
Well, Brother Ned, thank you for inviting me to be here with you again. I'm Reverend Lukata Mjumbe. I'm the pastor of the Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm the father of three children. My oldest daughters, my twin daughters, are 24 years old. My son is 20, and he'll be 21 this summer. Uh,
Awesome.
and I've been married twice and still trying to get it right. So I have been married and divorced. Was married eight
Mm,
years the first time, and I have been married 13 years to my wife, and fatherhood and the struggles and the challenges and the blessings of fatherhood are something that are always in my heart and on my mind. And
mm,
so I think fatherhood is the most important job that I've ever had. I've had many in my life, and becoming a pastor was a third career, as they say. But the vocation, the responsibility, the privilege of being a father is something that I take most seriously, and I think it is
mm.
one of the most important jobs that we ever are blessed to have. And
Amen.
we need to know how to do it right.
There you go. There you go. Well, listen, man, I hope tonight we get a chance to kind of help some folks, some brothers, hopefully, who are like us, who are trying our best to do it right. We don't always get it right, but we're always in the game. And I think that's the for me that's always been the crucial component. I mean, I'm a father of technically four boys. Um, like you, look how I was married once, married before, and from my wife we had two sons together, and she had two sons prior to us. So I have four boys that I'm always mindful of how they view, how they see me, and making sure that I do my due diligence to put on and show and display what I believe are the real attributes that they need to help them understand fatherhood and manhood.
Amen.
Um, and so, with that, I wanted to touch base on this one piece, and I personally think that there's this huge difference between, and I think some people think that they're one and the same, and that's the difference between manhood and masculinity. That machismo, that I'm a man, doesn't necessarily mean that you are a good father. And I think
Right.
a lot of times, a lot of brothers think that, hey, because, and I'm going to be frank here, so please forgive me, but because I got two testicles, that makes me a good father. All that makes you is genetically capable of producing, helping produce a child.
Mm-hmm.
What's your perspective on, the manhood versus fatherhood kind of dialogue?
If I can chime in a little
Mhm.
bit here, when you think about manhood and childhood, um, manhood is just a maturation process. You're just going from being a boy to a teenager to being a man. Um, but fatherhood comes with wisdom, and
Mm.
whether it's innate or it's learned. And I think we as a body really need to create a platform like this for men who don't know how to be fathers, right?
Mm.
Because there's so many men who don't have a father figure to emulate. So the principle that W.E.B. Du Bois talked about, reaching back and pulling each other up, I think it also applies in this here scenario. Um, Fatherhood is being a leader, being responsible, uh, uh, showing your family, your kids that you care.
Hmm.
Not just giving them things, but spending that time. And
Mm.
the one thing that I shared with my daughter and my son this past weekend, I told him, I said, don't worry about getting me anything. I don't want anything. I got
Mhm.
everything. I have everything that I need. I got enough socks. I got enough shirts. I got enough cologne. I got enough jewelry, trinkets.
Right, right, right.
I got all of that. I said, I want you to do something else for me. Figure it out. And I sat home, didn't do a thing. They cooked me a wonderful dinner, and I'm watching them, scurrying around, running back and forth to the store to get various things. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I sat there in a little bit of in awe, in amazement, because the most important thing that I valued at that particular time was the time that
Mm.
I spent to show appreciation for the time that I put into them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
at the end of the day, the biggest thing you can give your children is your time. You know, you could be a dad, a father. I mean, you could be what was the term you used? Uh,
A
man,
man, yeah,
manhood
your
and father.
manhood, yeah.
I could be a man and produce a kid, and every now and then come by and say, hey, how the boy,
Hmm.
how you doing, and throw you a couple dollars and keep it moving. But it's different whenever you spend time and you teach and you guide and you
Yeah.
provide that nurturing balance that every child needs, and I believe that they need that balance. They need their father and they need their mother to pour into them, so
Right.
that they
Right.
won't have a lack and start trying to fill the voids. Um, so I think there's a lot more to being a father.
Yeah.
Whenever my kids, they don't call me father, they say daddy. And I always took like real admiration for the daddy versus anything else, because
Anything
daddy,
other? Yeah. Yeah.
that's intimate. That's, hey, you've been here for me, you've done everything. It means a lot that you're here, so I call you my daddy versus
Mhm.
oh, that's my father.
That's my father. Right. Right.
That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. 2 cents worth of value, man. We appreciate that. Listen, because that's multiplied when you share it.
Absolutely.
Brother Luca, what you got for me, Rev?
Well, brother, I think that fatherhood frequently is not factored into our popular definitions of what it means to be a man.
Mm,
Uh, Fatherhood is often an afterthought. I would say even Father's Day, brother, is often an afterthought.
yeah.
I appreciate my daughters stepping up this year with the gifts,
Mhm.
because the I also have enough socks and neckties, and they say, why do fathers that like golf always get socks for Father's Day in case they get a hole in one. But so they stepped up this year, and I appreciated it. But I will say that as men, when we're growing up, when we're taught what it means to be a man, fatherhood isn't frequently factored in.
No.
To be a man is to don't cry. To be a man is to be strong. To be a
Hmm.
man is to know how to fight. To be a man is to know how to keep from getting hustled or cheated by
Right.
somebody.
Right.
To be a man is um, to be responsible for oneself. But fatherhood is something entirely different. And so, I talk to brothers, and when you start to challenge certain people above the age of 18 in a certain way, you may immediately get back. And I got in trouble when I said this in a sermon one time. They'll say, I'm a grown ass man, and I said, you are precisely right. Because an ass or a donkey, that's a biblical word, is a beast of burden. Is
Mm,
is one that is always subject to something or someone else. But you didn't always used to be an ass. A donkey is also a descendant of that. At one time, a donkey may have been a stallion. At one time,
mm,
a donkey may have come from something that was much greater, that carried on a much higher level of responsibility. And I do believe that there was a time, and I don't try to romanticize our history in any way, but I certainly know that fatherhood in different times and different spaces has had a much higher value of respect and a higher value of importance in terms of factoring it into what it means to be a man. You went very quickly from manhood to an expectation that you would become a father.
yeah.
You weren't allowed just to kind of be running around doing your
Right.
thing as a grown ass man and not creating a family, because the family was considered to be the smallest unit of the nation, and that the ruin of the nation could begin in the homes of the family. And so, being a father and being someone who was a leader in your family was something that was very important. And we're not always trained up in that way. We're not always
Hmm.
taught what it means, what it looks like, what it lives like. We have some popular conceptions of manhood, but the fatherhood piece is different. And even all the language is twisted up now, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays, brother Chris, when you're called, when you hear daddy, it's almost like an expletive. That's just my baby daddy,
Right.
and so we don't even know
Mm,
what words to use. to say the patriarch. Well, that's negative now. Well, that's patriarchy. And patriarchy is considered is the domination of women. It's sexism, it's misogyny, and so I don't even know that we even have the right language, the right concepts, because
Mm.
very intentionally, black men, black fathers were separated from their families institutionally, not accidentally by design, and we have had to fight in order to be fathers. And I do want to say that as well, because I think you said changing the narrative. A part of changing the narrative,
Yeah,
brother Ned, is telling the truth.
absolutely.
The truth of the matter is that black fathers, all of the studies show, don't go by this the popular street talk or the political condemnations that you hear in politicians' speeches.
That's
Black
right.
men, when they are compared with white men, when they're compared with other men, are doing a heroic job and making a heroic effort to be actively involved in the lives of their children. We
Mm.
are. And when I talk to brothers, I know that we want to. That does
Yes.
not mean that it's easy, and that does not mean that there are not still institutional and social and cultural barriers that make it very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, as much as fatherhood messes with us, some of you all know you get into an argument with certain women. One of the first things you may hear, you ain't my daddy. Well, do you know who your daddy was? I mean, when I'm doing weddings nowadays, it's very rare, unfortunately, when you see a
Wow.
father giving away their daughter, in the whole
Wow.
traditional marriage ceremony.
Mm.
Go back and check and see how frequently we're seeing fathers who were there even to quote walk their daughter down the aisle and to give their daughter away. And there's a whole patriarchal issue and critique that we could give of that system in general. But I
Wow.
would say that the brokenness and the systems that make fatherhood difficult are huge. Whether that be child support, whether that be the legacy of broken homes that have come from various intentional systems going all the way back to slavery,
Yeah.
or whether that be the popular portrayal of the black father or what
Hmm.
it means to be a father. And so we're
Yeah.
wrestling and we're struggling, and we need some coursework. We need some curriculum where we could actually be trained. Because where do you learn it? If you didn't have a father in your home or a grandfather or an uncle, father figure, where do you
Yeah.
learn
Where'd you pick? Where'd,
how
right.
to be a father? I'll confess, when I first became a father, my strategy was to do the opposite of whatever it is that I had saw my father do.
And
And,
you
and,
know
and
what?
I thought that was the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, I did the
It only
exact
took me
same.
so far, and frequently it took me in the wrong direction. So,
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. What you was about to say?
No, I concur. I didn't necessarily do what my father did because my father was there. Wasn't married to my mom, but my father was very active. But I had a lot of bad examples around me,
Hmm.
mhm.
and I was able to to extrapolate what's the right way by looking at the wrong way so many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
And I think I fared pretty well. Um, but kind of to what Rev was talking about, when you go back and you look at the systems that had been put in place, because of the breach, because of the male not being in the family, being stripped away, there is a lot that has happened that has every system tries to balance itself. If you
Mm.
take one piece out, if if one arm is weak, the other arm is going to try to compensate for the weak arm. And I think about the family unit, and when the black man was taken out of the family unit, that balance, that void was, you know, the wife or the woman tried to balance and fill in that gap, which she wasn't quite able to do, but it created another problem. So now that the
Mm.
black man is trying to come back, there's this struggle of power, in the households sometimes, not all the
Right.
time,
Right.
but you have
Yeah.
that conflict because the
Because
wife,
there's an imbalance.
there's an imbalance.
Yeah. I
She
got it.
doesn't really understand how to relate, and he doesn't understand, his role. So you have this system that has to be revamped
Mm.
and retaught and reconstructed. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
in order for it to function the way it was designed. But as Rev was alluding to, there's so many little things that has been set against the black man, that it makes it real tough. And forums like this, but more importantly, having a, a group of men, an organization, a
Mm.
rites of passage, so to say, that will teach you and show you all the things that you need to know as a
Right.
father. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
that's
huge, Chris. I think that both of you made mention of something that I wanted to kind of like uh, spotlight a little bit more, and that's the fact that I think that there is this missing component of the tutelage, the learned behaviors that I think a lot of our sisters got growing up as to what it means to be a woman. What does it mean to be a wife? What does it mean to be a mother? Like they got, that was part of their upbringing. And
You
for
think
men,
so?
we didn't get that.
well,
I
well,
don't, I don't, brother. I don't think women got it either. Honestly,
Okay.
I really don't.
I
I
think
mean,
they got something.
and I'm
They
not.
got, I think they got more than we got.
They got
I'm
they
not
got
going to try to
something.
sound like Kevin Samuels here, but I'll tell you this. I mean, in terms of being trained to be a wife,
Right.
if you
You didn't
didn't
get
grow
that.
up in a home with a husband and a wife,
You
then
didn't
I
get
don't
it.
know who could have taught you that,
Right.
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 because
What,
you
what,
learned to be a wife from a wife, not
right.
simply from a woman.
Right.
Correct.
and
So
and
Correct.
and so and you learn to be a mother who can mother alongside a father by a
Mm.
mother who is mothering alongside a father. So
Yeah.
oftentimes it's
Okay.
very difficult for, I mean, the survival strategies and the skill sets that are necessary for a single mother to raise her child are similar but are not identical to the skill sets that you need to be able to partner with a father in the raising
Father.
of your child. It's
Yeah.
very different. I mean, and I
Yeah.
learned
Yeah.
some of this even in a brief period in between my marriages when I was a single dad. And I was a
Mhm.
single dad taking care of my three children. I was the sole custodian of two little girls who were 8 years old and a little boy who was 5 years old. And the skill set that I had to try to quickly develop as a single dad was very different than the skill set that I had when I was a married dad. And
Yeah.
so I'm not
Yeah.
sure that women get it either, so much so, and I know that we didn't get it, that men didn't get it. During that period, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go write a grant and I'm going to start an organization called Daddy's Little Girls. Because I had two 8-year-old twin
Mm.
daughters that the only thing that I knew that everybody had told me was keep your shotgun clean.
Right.
That was the wisdom that I had.
That was the
You know,
extent of it.
I didn't know anything about how to shop for clothes. Girls' clothes, the sizes are all different from boys. I didn't
Right.
know how to do their hair, how to wash their hair, conditioner. What's that? I didn't know. Uh,
Mhm.
I was praying against the menstrual cycle coming anytime soon because I knew I didn't know how to
Weren't
teach
even
that.
ready.
Training bras, emotional health, all of the things that little girls need. And I found all of these brothers who had little girls who were okay a little bit with raising their boys because we had been boys before. At least we knew something about that,
Right.
but had absolutely no clue how to deal with the physical,
Mm.
emotional, spiritual, psychological needs of a
Of a
daughter
young
or a
lady.
little
Yeah.
girl. And so what we had to do in this organization, we formed a board of directors that were made up of not necessarily of single dads, but fathers of daughters. Some of them were single dads. Some of them had custody. Some didn't. Some had problems with the baby mama. Some were married. It was a diversity. But we brought in grandmothers and mothers and mothers who had dealt successfully with fathers who they weren't married to.
Okay.
And they came in and they taught us. They said, these are the sizes. We went into a beauty shop. They showed us hands-on how to wash and how often. I mean, I can wash my hair every day. You know, you can't do that with little girls. You know, how to manage the things you need to have in the house. They talk to us about when they become adolescents and teenagers and menstrual cycles and tampons and maxi pads and
correct
training bras and all those kind of things. And I learned that every brother doesn't understand fatherhood and manhood in the same way, nor does every woman, every sister, because there are some sisters that have no clue how to be a wife. They have no clue how to be a mother with a father. And so as much as we need a curriculum as well, there needs to be some companion courses as well, because our sisters also need to learn how to, I mean, how do you partner with a strong man? If you used to your whole life dealing with weak men who don't take care of responsibility, who you have to demand and beg and plead and threaten in order to get the things that you need as a bare minimum, what are you going to do when a real man shows up? You might say, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to say hallelujah. Well, maybe, but you might know when to stop. And you might not know what to do because you don't have the language and the vocabulary and the skill set even to emotionally, physically, socially deal with that kind of man either.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. I think there's a need for a learning curve for both genders because
we all messed up.
We're all struggling in the process. And I think for brothers, I think one of our biggest Achilles heels is the fact that we have not been learned how to adapt to some of those attributes. Like you said, when you become a dad, a father, you know, your world completely goes in a different trajectory than you could have ever imagined.
Absolutely.
You know, and so
especially
I'm thankful.
Of girls.
I was about to say, because I was about to tell you, I'm thankful that I'm a father of boys.
You got sons, but when you get girls,
the daughters, I don't know if I could have managed it as well.
You start feeling guilty about things you did 20 years ago. You start trying to repent. So yeah,
I can imagine. I can't listen.
It's different. Yeah,
it's a different world.
And but we need each other though to help each other. I mean, I think the best, like Chris, I think you were saying, I think the best teachers that we can get are each other. That can help each other, because like there's this saying, so how do you eat an elephant? You know, one bite at a time, and not by yourself. Yeah. You know, and if we're gonna fix this, it's going to be because we do it together and we draw upon the experiences of others, and we're all perfect in our imperfections. I mean, I get some things right, and then I get some things right on some days. But I do not get all things right, and I certainly don't get all things right on every day.
Every day.
But I might be able to connect with Chris and Ned, and on where I fall down on Tuesday, that might be when you shine. That might be the thing that you actually know very well, and how to manage very well. And so we could find some way to draw upon the collective wisdom and the experience. I think that's the way forward.
And you know, I'm a give an example of what you just said there, Rev. I was on the phone with a mentor of mine on Father's Day. This is one of my high school teachers. And just so happened to have the same last name, and we became really tight. He became, you know, like a father figure to me, and he ended up moving down south. I called him up on Father's Day just to wish him happy Father's Day, and we got to talking. He knows that that I'm a financial advisor, so we were talking about finances and how this is not a conversation that is typically had in our culture. You know, and you know, we talked about why, and as a result of there not being any finances to really talk about, that's why we never talked about it. But he went on to say, he said, Chris, my sons they're going to inherit a nice amount of money. And my concern is that they are not
Mm,
going to appreciate it, and they're not going to be
mm,
prepared. And I asked him a question for my own edification, because I'm going through that process right now. And I asked him, I said, so what would you do different that would make them prepared?
mm,
And what he said was, he said, because I grew up without, I didn't have a lot. I wanted to give my boys everything that I didn't have. And in doing that, I actually crippled them and made
Mm.
them a bit
mhm,
lazy. He said, I would have taught them the value of hard work and responsibility, so that when they get something, they could appreciate it, because everything has been just given to them.
Mhm.
And it was a light bulb, and it was an aha moment for me, because I'm going through that process. Is like, okay, my son is 17. It's like, all right, buddy, um, it's time for you to take on
yeah,
some
yeah,
major responsibilities, because you're going to this private school is not cheap. All these activities you're in is not cheap. We I need you to understand and appreciate what you have.
right.
um and I was torn, because uh I'm pushing him to get a summer job, but yet there's some other things that he could be working on, like his SAT preparation and all of these things. And I'm just like, okay, so how do I balance? How do I make sure he gets what he needs as a developing young man, and becoming responsible, so that he won't be in a situation like my mentor's children, you know, ill
Yeah,
prepared for what's to come. And it's all about preparing your children for what's to come, so that they can handle life's challenges
hmm,
with ease,
Mhm.
and that was a piece of advice that I would not have gotten had I not been open to communicate and ask questions. And I think we
Yeah.
as men, we got to be open enough to communicate and ask questions. If you don't
yeah,
know, ask somebody. You
Yeah.
know, Rev was like, "Listen, man, I braiding his hair and dealing with all of these dynamics of these little girls. I don't know.
Me
Somebody
neither.
help."
that's right.
And we cannot be so macho or such
Yes, sir.
bullheaded men that we can't take advice. And if the
Yeah,
flip side of that, on the female side, the women have been taught to be strong Black women. And in doing so, they have taken on some male responsibilities.
Mhm.
And when the man comes into the play, it kind of creates a very interesting dynamic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I think.
the advice on the hair is don't do it. I see you got the do it yourself T-shirt on, brother Ned. Uh, uh,
That ain't the model. That's not the model, huh?
but that's not. Do not and don't do it yourself, and don't have a woman who likes you do your daughter's hair either.
Mm,
Because
that's a whole other show by
that's
itself,
a
right
whole
there.
nother show. Because when they're doing hair, they're getting information.
They're setting
They,
it up.
they depositing
Oh man,
seeds. You got to get somebody that don't like you, somebody you don't like.
Take it to the hairdresser.
right. Hey,
Yeah,
mutual. Just listen. We
be
go to the
careful
shop.
about that too. But you got to make sure that's a sacred space, and there's all kind of things that they can put in your daughter's head as they put something on her head,
I
and
hear you.
so it's but number one, don't do it yourself,
There
because
it
you can
is.
go
There
back
it
and
is.
you can look at my daughter's school pictures when they were 10, 9, and 10 years old. They were like, "Oh, your daddy did your hair for that
Right.
picture, didn't he?"
So they can tell the difference.
They're like, "Yeah, that was
Yeah,
him."
that was him trying.
Yeah.
That was Daddy
But,
trying
but
to do it.
but Rev, you're hitting on something else that I think is also missing in a lot of Black families, and that's edification. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
all too often the man is bashed. You know, he's talked about, he's belittled, he's emasculated, and you know, maybe there's reasons for that, but I think when it comes to raising your family, you know, you really need to be able to operate as a cohesive unit, and never tear each other down. Always edify, you know, your wife, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Your you know, the wife needs to edify the husband, because you're creating these images, um, you know, in your child's mind of
Hmm.
the other person, and
Yep.
Yeah,
they're forming these ideas and things, and now that contributes to the ill relationship, the breach,
absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. We got to build our men up. We have to build our fathers up. We have to encourage them. We have to set good examples. And when we see good examples, we need to lift those examples up. And I
Absolutely.
mean, and it's not about, we can take it too far. I mean, sometimes like when I was, as I have been a father, and Ned and Chris, I don't know if you all have ever had this, but I would have people just come to me and just uh, gushing over, oh, you're such a good father. You take care of you take care of your kids. I'm like, well, I'm supposed to.
Right.
I mean, it's like, why are your standards so low for what we're supposed to be? And so we have to raise the standard as well. It's like, if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
expecting to get celebrated and have a ticker tape parade because you take care of the child that you brought into the world, then there's a
Yeah.
problem with that too. And so even as we lift up, we raise the standards. Like, our expectation is excellence. Our
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
expectation
Listen.
is that you're going to be responsible. Don't come and brag to me, hey, I brushed my teeth today. I brushed my hair today. You want a prize for that?
Right.
That's what
Celebrate
you're
me for that.
supposed to do. And if you don't do it, we're going to look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
And that needs to be a new standard that I hope, as and we're probably a ways away from that right now, but to get to a point where we expect the best from our Black men, and
Yeah.
we speak life to them, we
Mhm.
edify them, we lift them up, we encourage them, because we say, we know you're going to be a great father.
Yeah.
That's
We
right.
That
know that
that's
you're going
that's
to
a
be.
strong point, Lucata. I mean, I remember, and I'll tell this brief story. Here in Trenton, there was this organization that used to do this annual uh, highlight of dads, and it was a program they did a celebration, an award celebration called Platinum Dads.
Mm,
And so, you know, you had to be nominated by someone, and for being what they considered a good dad. And I got nominated one year and received the award, but I felt like, why am I standing up here? I remember standing at the podium and saying that, and there were some other brothers who went before me and told some great stories of how they just felt like, they were so deserving of it. And I'm not knocking them in this moment, but I am saying, as I said that day, you want me to accept an award for something that I'm supposed to do.
amen.
Like, I'm supposed to be a good dad. Like, I got 4 sons. I didn't understand in my head. It didn't equate to me why I'm being celebrated for something that I'm supposed to do. And I think I used the equation like, you guys want me to be excited because I learned to tie my shoe. Well, if I don't tie my shoe, I'm going to trip and fall.
Mm-hmm.
So
There you
if
go.
I don't do good dad, I'm going to send 4 boys in the world that are going to terrorize the country.
Yeah.
And that's how I took it. And it was like, so celebrating, the things that we are supposed to do, the things that we are responsible for innately, doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And I agree with you. I think that the bar is entirely too low sometimes for us. I think that the expectations that are put out there by others is that, hey, you showed up, so that's, hey, let's go. And I was like, having been in a situation where I tell people my dad was present in the home, but was probably one of the worst examples for me of fatherhood. And so, like the two of you mentioned earlier, I too had to look at my dad and say, okay, I'll take this, but I'll remove that. I can use this, but I'll delete that.
Yeah.
And I think for most of us, that's not in our own fatherhood walk. it's not uncommon. Our kids probably look at us and think like, yeah, I wouldn't do that when I get older and I become a dad. I won't do what my dad did.
Right.
But that process or that opportunity to share that type of knowledge with your children, your sons or your daughters, is more important in the sense of using your own walk as a living example of the do's and the don'ts, not just a blanket, hey, I'm here. You know,
Yeah.
it has to have more meat on the bone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has to have more meat on the bone. And I think that a lot of times that doesn't exist for us. They just automatically assume that, hey, you know, he's in the house, so he must be okay. Things are good. Or, hey, he shows up at all the sporting events, and he's always cheering. He's one of the biggest cheerleaders. There's got to be so much more in order for us, like you said, to get the bar to a level where, you know, we're literally passing on, or as Chris used the term, having a proper rites of passage for our sons to understand what it means to go from boyhood to manhood to fatherhood.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not. It's a long journey, and I'll say this. I mean, my daughters are 24. My son is 20. Will be 21 this summer. But I still recognize 24 years in, there's some things that I did not learn. And if I had it, now I'm not trying to start all over again. I don't want any more new babies, but I know that I would do better. I know that I would be a better dad if I was starting over again, because there's some things that it took me 10 years to figure out. And my children, my twins, I had two together at once. So any mistakes I made it twice at the same time. Things I did right, I got a double blessing. But there were only 3 years between when they were born and when my son was born. And so I didn't figure everything out. And so it took me a while to pick up on some things. And, you know, interesting, brother, you know, I'll tell you, my father was there until I was 11. And I frequently wished that he wasn't when he was there. But then something else happened that was even more interesting and in some ways damaging. We haven't talked about this yet in terms of what happens oftentimes with our homes, with single moms, particularly with little boys. At 11 years old, I became the man of the house. At 11 years old, I was sitting at my father's table at the head of the dinner table. At 12, 13 years old, and I had sisters that were 2 years and 3 years younger than me, I was at least consulted sometimes about disciplining my younger siblings. I had an older sister that I would be asked whether or not I thought she should be allowed to go on a date with certain people by my mother. My mother made me the man of the house, and I was in no way prepared to be a man or a father at 11 years old. And oftentimes our young boys who grow up with single moms begin to take on that identity in some misshapen and broken ways as a man and as a father figure, and they don't quite know what they're doing. And it shows up later. It showed up for me later as a younger man.
Right.
It showed up with me in terms of what I thought it meant to be a father when I first became a father. It even led to the choices and the decisions I made in terms of who became the mother of my children. Because I thought I was supposed to be the savior and the Messiah. It wasn't Jesus Christ. It was me. I'm the one that was supposed to come in and rescue
and make everything right.
Real choices that I would not have made later, and I came to learn the importance of fatherhood, even in terms of, like, how about we tell our sons even before we're raising them to be fathers, when you choose a mate, when you choose a girlfriend, when you choose a wife, it's important for you to examine what her relationship was and is with her father. Because whatever her relationship was or wasn't, be clear, it's going to show up in your relationship with her.
Yep, absolutely.
That imbalance.
Right.
Right.
So you
Right.
checking for
And
does she look good? Does she have this frame? Is she stable? Is she educated? Is she a good person? All of that can conceal something else.
It
And you
normally
need
does.
to look. How's your relationship with your daddy? What kind of relationship did you? And it doesn't exclude people. It doesn't mean, oh, well, these are checklists, but it means that you have to understand what she's bringing into your relationship because of the kind of relationship she had or didn't have with her father or her
Yeah.
fathers. Sometimes
and
she had multiple,
Right.
the biological, the stepfather, the boyfriend, the different father figures that were in her life that also shaped her identity as a woman, as what
Correct.
she thought that a mother was supposed to be, as what she thought that a wife was supposed to be and supposed to do. And those relationships are important. And I don't know that we've learned well how to deal with the fathers of young women. Because I'll tell you this, and I know older people always talk bad about the generation behind them. But these young boys was afraid to come and speak to me, wanting to come and see my daughters.
Yes, sir.
I mean, because they didn't have to. In most instances, there wasn't no father they had to come and talk to.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
you remember back in the day when somebody called your house on your house phone?
Well, on the house phone.
Yeah. Can I speak to Christy? Well, this is
Who is
Christy's
this?
father.
Right.
Who is
Who are you?
this? Is
Who
my
is this?
phone. Nowadays, everybody got one of these. Call Christy directly. They can
Yep.
text Christy directly, and so they can bypass the father altogether. And so those dynamics of fatherhood and how they affect who their daughters and who their sons come to be is also one of them courses that need to be a part of the curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Good.
Go
I was gonna
ahead.
say there's a point that you made, Lucana, that I wanted to just bounce back to when you talked about just that whole process of going from, adolescence to manhood. And, I think that a lot of times our young men end up in relationships without having an understanding of where that goes or what the outcomes of that are. And we don't prepare them as men. We don't, because I know I have these conversations with my son, but I know it isn't always across the board. And like you, I spoke to my sons out of my own dysfunctional moments in the bad relationships I had,
Right.
with all the bumps in the dark that may have occurred. But being able to get our sons to understand, that the potential of fatherhood starts before you lay down, right? Before you get to that the texting, the calling, the getting that girl to say, "Hey, I like you and I want to be with you," you know, having our sons get a firm grasp of, "Hey, dude, understand that this is where you're headed," and know that that means that there are some responsibilities that come from your behavior, your actions, that can change the direction or the path that you have to take.
Right.
And it's for at least I know for me, I tell anybody really quick, my oldest boy wasn't planned. I initially was not with his mom. We ended up marrying, but it changed my whole flight pattern. Like I was like this, hey man, where we going this weekend? I'm traveling, I'm flying here, I'm driving wherever, and I'm out to, okay, we got to get Pampers. I got to buy,
I
like,
feel you.
your world shifts. And so I think that sometimes if they are aware, and not, this isn't an infomercial on preventing pregnancies. It is a clear moment of saying to our sons and our daughters, particularly our sons in this case, hey, know your actions and know what the cause of your actions can be.
Oh, I give that as an infomercial.
Right.
I say if you not ready, willing, and able, I say this to my son. If you're not ready, willing, and able to be a father to the child of that woman, do not. You need to wait, because the first time that I was with the mother of my 3 children, the biological mother of my 3 children, the first time I was with her was only 2 weeks after I met her, and I created 2 babies on the first time.
Right.
So we didn't even live in the same state, and then I get the call, and so you really need to be prepared for that. And I will say this though, because I said as much as I'm not trying to start over, because I've learned lessons and there's things that I could learn. I do think that Ned, Chris, that all of us, we know that right now that the best way that we're going to shape and define the next generation of fathers is really going to be before they become fathers.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
so the role that we have to play as father figures in the life of other young men who may not have fathers who are there with them is so important. You know, in the book of James, it talks about the true religion, the pure religion is one that advocates and prioritizes for the widow and the orphan. And if we understand in a biblical sense what was being talked about then, the widow in the first century was the baby's mama, the single mother of the 21st century. Yeah. It was a woman who was operating outside of the protection, outside of the relationship with a man. And a man was necessary for protection. You were extremely vulnerable to abuse and violation if you did not have a husband. And if you were a widow, whether your husband had died or your husband had been killed or whatever, you were extremely vulnerable, just like our single mothers are today. And the orphan was a child that didn't have a father. They would call you were considered to be an orphan with your widowed mother, but you were still considered to be an orphan. And if you look at definition, we even can understand it that way today. They say orphan, double orphaned. But the orphan that was considered the most vulnerable was that child that didn't have a father. And it said the true religion, the pure religion, is the one that advocates and protects them. And so I say, even if I have any more babies, we got enough babies, young boys, young girls in our community today that need us. And I don't know how we do it. I don't know the system. It's difficult. It's complicated. How do you have a relationship with the child without having a relationship with the mother? You know, there's all kinds of different complexities with it. But I do know this, that if we don't start with the young boys and the young girls today who are the future young fathers and the future young mothers, we're going to miss it. And there's an even larger group of people today that are outside of the direction and the protection of a father than there was even when we were growing up. And so as bad as it is today, we can project that it's going to be even worse 15 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now. And we got to stand in that gap and be a father to somebody that we didn't make. You know, we are not biologically responsible, but we are going to have to stand in the gap as we are able, especially those of us who've learned the lessons and know the things that we learned from the hit or miss, you know, right some of the time, wrong some of the time legacies that we have. We can apply some of those lessons and even start helping to raise some. And I don't know, you can be a coach, you can be a mentor, you can be a teacher, you can be a counselor, or you can just show up in some way and say, you know what? I got him for 3 days out of the week. Just send him to me. Yeah. Let him spend a weekend with me every other weekend. I'm gonna show him some man stuff. I'm gonna give him some things that you can be a great mother. You can be a great single mother. You can be a phenomenal mother. I was raised for a significant part of my life by a single mother with 5 kids, single mother. But my single mother could never be my father and could never be a father.
Yes, sir.
She could never do the things that a father needs to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I concur. W.E.B. Du Bois, he had it right, but there was a breach in that system. You know, the talented 10th was supposed to be comprised of 10% of the most successful Black folks. and their goal was to reach back and to pull the next generation up. But there was really no effective system put in place to do that, and that's why it never really materialized the way he envisioned it. I think Mikado, what you're talking about is the same type of system, but we have to have a more proactive approach at going after the babies,
Yeah. Yeah.
and getting them before they get tainted, because the system out here is treacherous, and
It's
once
unforgiving.
it's unforgiving, and once they get caught up in it, it's
Yep.
tough. It's tough, and we got to be able to reach them before that. When I look
Yeah.
at the streets, Ned, I got family in the streets,
Yep.
and they're caught up. And I had a conversation with one of them, and he was just like, it's just I'm beyond help.
Yeah. That's how they feel.
And that's how they feel. I'm like, you're not beyond help. He said, you don't understand what I've done. I'm beyond help. And this was a conversation that I had with him a few weeks before he died. And that's the death trap that we got to counteract.
Yeah.
We gotta break up that trap too.
We got to break it, man. Yeah.
It is. We cannot sit idly by. Some of these systems, we got to break up this child support system. This child support system is broken.
Yes, sir.
This child support system prompts, leads, and just as we used to say the welfare system would cause the father not to be in the home and to hide because they knew they couldn't get the welfare if there was a man there. You remember Claudine and James Earl Jones and all of that?
Pretend like he's not there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Today, I know brothers who sell drugs and rob people in order to be able to pay child support. They say it's safer for me to do that than to not pay child support, because then when I'm not paying child support, somebody looking for me
coming to get you,
lock me up, and I gotta pay it before I can get out.
Yep,
that's a
it is a unforgiving,
it's a ridiculous system
that does not help us reach where we need to reach. We gotta find a way to hold people responsible. We gotta find a way to make sure children are taken care of. But the systems and the so-called criminal justice system that people get bound up in, and the street system. but everybody can be forgiven, and it starts with us.
That's right. And listen,
with us.
And on that note, I really want to just charge any brother who is watching us today. I know we got a couple of cats who are on. My man Calvin's on with us tonight, and listen, if you are in a position where you understand what we're talking about, step up and take on the mantle. Be the king that God created you to be, and cover your community, your family, your children, and your neighbor's children if need be. Because we must do it in an intentful way that does not involve us getting entangled in nonsense or mess and doing more damage than good. And I say that because I've seen multiple times, I've watched brothers who were coaches, who were mentors, who were counselors, and started off with this intention of saying, hey, I just want to be a support system for you, mom, and your child. And then all of a sudden, the child sees you coming out of mommy's bedroom in the morning.
That's what I'm talking about.
You can't be that guy. You have to be real about this process, because if we don't do it the right way, as you said, the next 5, 10, 15 years is scary. It's absolutely scary where our young men and young women will be. And again, you see it now, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on around me? In the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be like, oh my God, where do I move to? Because like it's everywhere.
Right. There's a war going on.
Well, the reason why I like this system that the Royalty Ministry Network has is because you have the barbershop, but you have the beauty shop as well.
Correct.
And both our brothers and our sisters have to begin to take some responsibility for themselves. They have to go into our war rooms and come up with our strategies and pull he said, pull back the sheet, pull back the covers, all of that. But then we got to figure out a way to come together to make this work as well. And it is so important that we do the work. You know, the brothers have to do that work, but the sisters have to do that work.
Their work too. That's right.
Absolutely.
It is a collective.
Let a man be your coach for your child, be the teacher, be the counselor, and don't think he needs to be your boyfriend.
Correct.
Don't extend the invitation. You know, don't leave the back door open. You know, it requires some discipline on both sides, and some things that we need to do together, because it's like the one good thing about the child support system is, at least in principle, it says it's all about the child. This money is not for you, mama. This money is not based on you, daddy. This is what is in the interest of the child, and that's what it's supposed to be centered. And in so much of this, we have to center the children. That's what a father does. A father puts the children first and in the center.
That's right.
And says,
anchors the house, anchors the family.
Yeah, over the whole the thing is, you can't be like, and this is why you need to be with the mama while she's pregnant. So you'll realize that your fathering doesn't start on the birthday.
No. Your
fathering starts with the prenatal care. The fathering starts when you're taking care of mama when she's on bed rest.
Yes, sir.
The fathering comes when you're helping that mother. And then if you lay that foundation right, you realize that you have to continue. Because if the mother is broken and the mother is unable and the mother is damaged and injured, then your child is also going to be broken and damaged and injured as well. And so,
absolutely.
So we got to do it together. But brother, thank you for the invitation.
Listen, I appreciate each and every one of you, man.
With you and with all fathers to listen, because invite me in. I'm not saying I have all the answers to answer solutions that solve, but if there are people that have things that are working, let's do it. But if we don't even find the organization, you can look in any of your neighborhoods, in any of your schools, any of your churches, and you're going to see some children.
The need is there.
That need you as a father to show up.
Absolutely.
And just be that. Don't be the boyfriend.
Right.
Don't be the sugar daddy. Be the father.
Be a father image for him.
Be a father figure. Be a father figure for that child.
Absolutely. And Ned, I wanted to mention this because we're talking about stepping up and making sure that we reach our kids. And I don't want to act as if there is no organizations out there that's actually doing that. We want to give kudos to those who are out there doing that. We'd like to just add to that because there's not enough of it being done. I know Stacey Heddon's out there doing some great things, and Andre Thomas is doing some great things, and Bruce Boyd, they're doing some great things.
Absolutely.
They're making the impact the way they can. But I think we need to do what they're doing and some.
Absolutely.
And help contribute to that. If everybody pitches in, we can take back our boys.
Yeah. And again, like you, I applaud all of those brothers because you're absolutely right. There are some brothers out here who are really putting in the work and are really invested in trying to help lift up our brothers and our young sisters, particularly those brothers you mentioned who are helping young men really understand what that path should look like. Right. And more of us need to step up, myself included. Absolutely. Right? We need to do more whenever there's an opportunity to do more, and there's always an opportunity.
Yep.
Because the need is so great.
And I'll give a shout out to the institution that's often criticized. I will say that churches are doing a phenomenal job quietly as is kept. That those are oftentimes the places, and I'll give a shout out to the mosque. The Nation of Islam does a phenomenal job.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In terms of taking responsibility for young men and transforming them.
Yep.
And we need more. Anybody who's really doing good work, will also acknowledge, yes, give me my shout out, because don't say I'm not doing it like so many, but they'll also acknowledge in honesty that the demand for their supply is much greater.
Absolutely.
And,
Yes, sir.
and we need more and more institutional and individual and collective support so that we can begin to reach our young people. And before they become fathers, and even as they become fathers, our teenage mothers, it is so essential, because if we're waiting for the state and if we're waiting for the government to do it for us, we're lost.
Absolutely.
We've lost the game before it's even begun.
That's right.
So true. Listen, gentlemen, I am going to say to you, I appreciate you as always. Both of you, you know, I love you both, bro. You guys have always come to the table, have always been willing to be honest, open, and forthright by pulling the covers off and sharing the information that's needed, and in a timely way, so that folks understand, you know, that we don't have the ability to sit around on the sideline and just watch anymore. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate each and every one of the folks who are watching and have been following along today. I appreciate you guys because you took the time out to share with us, you know, your thoughts, your feelings, and the things that you have put in the comments. Trust me, we are watching and seeing them. We love you, and know that we are still in here doing the work, and that this is a safe place to start building a better you as we build a better us. And again, I think Chris, I think Lucado, you guys are phenomenal in what you do. I'm thanking God for just the ability to connect to you as we continue to talk about this thing called fatherhood, and ultimately what manhood even looks like for us, so that we can be better in our communities for the women that we're supposed to cover. With that, I'm going to say to everybody, listen, have a blessed night. Please, please, please continue to pray for each other. Continue to keep each other uplifted. Continue to do the work. Sometimes it's tough, but trust me when I say to you, it's worth it. All right. Next week, you'll get a chance to see my girl Monica with Barbershop Conversations at the same time here at Royalty Mission Network. Continue to share, continue to support, continue to be a part of our family as we continue to do this work together here at Royalty Mission Network. Take care. Love you guys. God bless.
God bless.